Marijn, the floor is yours.
All right. So, good morning. It's still good morning, although the guys that went before me were too late in talking. So, I can say the lunch is going to be a little late. So, before we go to start the lunch a little late, it's a real pleasure to be here. Ik spreek gewoon Nederlands trouwens, hè, dus, but I'm being asked to do it in English. It's basically because we have two guys from the UK that all of us had to adjust, but we're Dutch, so we are good in adjusting. Second thing, before I start, I'm a bit nervous. I have to tell you, I'm a bit nervous. It's not because of you, but it's because of my wife is here. So for the first time in 12 years, I'm going to speak, and my wife is here in the audience, and she finally learns what I'm doing all of the time, 80 hours a week. And she inspires me a lot every day, so that's nice to start with. My presentation is about how to find what we call the whispering talents. So I'm handicapped not only with the language thing, but only with the technology thing, so that doesn't matter. So this is me. So my name is Marijn Beuker. I'm 34 years old, but I'm still working for a lot of time in AZ, 12 years now. We call my role, we call it Head of Performance Development and Innovation. That basically what I'm doing is thinking about the future. So in football, traditionally we have lots of people thinking about today, tomorrow, maybe even the next season, because we have to recruit talents, new talents from 10 years old or talents for the first team. And I'm thinking about, all right, what does winning look like in 10 years? What does the brain look like in 10 years, or talent look like in 10 years, and what does that mean for the things we do in the now? That's basically my role, because the other people are too busy talking about today and tomorrow. But the thing is that in the development of young players, the world is changing, or even it has changed, because now Ajax, PSV are top clubs in Holland. Based on the first team, but if you look at talent development, the level in Holland is totally changed, because we're the number 15 club in the world, and by far the number one or the first club in Holland that is with homegrown players in the first team. So Athletic de Bilbao is on second place. He has 80% of homegrown players. We have 45% of homegrown players. So yesterday, 7 of the 11 who played are homegrown players. So that's nice, but the thing that's even nicer, I think, is that 13 of the 15 players in our first team, we found them when they were 10 years old. So we found them when they were this big, and we couldn't see if they had the potential to become phenomenal players in the future. On the other hand, maybe we did. So that's where my story is about. So first, I'm going to tell you some things about what we do, but I want you to first understand why we are forced to do this. Because my club doesn't have lots of money. We have 25 million euros of budget. That's much, but in for example, Ajax, PSV, they have 190 million euros of budget. And when we go to the UK or Ireland, I don't know how it's in Ireland, but in the UK or in Britain, there are clubs with 500 million euros of budget. So we will always be a step behind when we do the same things as they do. So what we know is that we cannot distinguish ourselves based on money. Because what lots of clubs do, they have lots of money, they look for the best talents there are, they bring them in, they create a good team, and at the end they buy success. So we learned a long time ago that we cannot compete based on money, so we want to compete. Our chance, well, Steve Jobs said the same. We say, think differently. Think differently, act differently. I always say, maybe think logically. Because if you know where you are now, you know where you want to be in the future, you know how talent looks like in the future, all you have to do is make that logical step from A to B. And then you think differently. But for AZ, we always say we don't buy success, we can create it. And we are forced to do so. So there are we believe always in making the difference not with money, but the difference with vision. So that's a clear understanding of the future and how it looks like. Then we relate that, or we transfer that into our program. And there's not a person in charge in our club. The program is in charge. The program doesn't tell you what to do, but it makes sure you understand what has to be achieved at the end. And we look for knowledge and facts. So what I said, I'm listening to neuroscientists to understand how the brain works. I also am talking with Louis van Gaal, and he is telling me some valuable knowledge as well. And actually, the two are telling me the same things. Only one uses a lot of difficult words. Well, actually, they do the same. Well, one always tells me, yes, I'm doing that all my life. So we all know Louis van Gaal, of course. And then you have to find capable staff, because they have to do what the program tells us to do. We don't tell people what to do, but we make sure they understand what has to be done at the end, and then they can be creative. But you have to find capable staff. 3 questions for us are very, very important, critical all the time. First one is, what's really a talent? But like, what's really a talent? And not only what looks like a talent, but what's really a talent from the inside. The second, if you know that, you can think, okay, how can I let people get maximum out of themselves? And the third one is, how do you create winning teams with all those talents? That are the 3 most important questions for us to understand, but I think it's called HR, HR. That's your job, basically. We're doing the same job. Only I prefer to do it with kids. That sounds maybe a bit different. So, a good question is, what is a talent? So my question to you guys is let's stick with sports or with soccer or football, but what do you think is a talent? What comes up when you say a talent? I want to hear some words. What do you think? A talent?
More than average.
More than average. Sorry? Passion. Do you know where passion comes from? It's nice. You say passion. Anybody speak Latin? Passion is I'm not speaking Latin, but I know 2 words. One of them is pati. Pati comes from suffering. So passion means suffering. How bad do you want something that you are willing to suffer for it? Because everybody is telling they want to do things for it. Well, everybody has an ambition. Some people want to do things for it, but not so much people want to sacrifice things for it. And that's what we call passion. So passion comes from pati. Pase is also from pati. You said?
Possibility to develop.
Possibility to develop.
Scarcity and skills.
Yes. Commitment, very good. Perseverance. Also, what's very important is of course the skills you have, like you have to pass the ball, technical skills. We all know that. Then the second question from me to you is, what do you think is talent? Is that something you were born with, or is it something that you can develop? Combination. That's the easy thing, of course. But we all know Messi, right? Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo. They all talk about Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. Messi, well, I talked with Marco van Basten once, and he is a former head coach of our club, and he told me, Messi, you can see he's born as a football player. You can see it using his hands. They are soft, they are relaxed. Even his tongue is relaxed when he plays football. So that's why you can see he's a born talent. And then you have Cristiano Ronaldo. He isn't soft at all. Well, the only thing is his hips. We saw the movies on the news a couple of weeks ago, but for the rest, he's static. So when he dribbles, he's forced, he's static. So there you can see that he only just taught him itself. Like that's a bad thing, but that's what he said. And he played very good football, so he must be right? I have one video for you guys that show in 3 minutes what I believe is really talent, and especially the last question, is it open for development?
Nobody's born smart. We all start at zero. Can't talk, can't walk, certainly can't do algebra. Adding, reading, writing, riding a bike. Nobody's good at anything at first. There was a time when Einstein couldn't count to 10. And Shakespeare had to learn his ABCs just like the rest of us. Thankfully, we're born to learn. Slowly, surely, you stumble, slip, crawl, fall, and fail and fall. Frustrating, confusing, trying, struggling, until one day, you walk. One foot in front of the other, one idea on top of the next. Each wrong answer making your brain a little bit stronger. Failing is just another word for growing, and you keep going. This is learning. Knowing that you'll get it, even if you haven't gotten it yet. Because the most beautiful, complex concepts in the whole universe are built on basic ideas that anyone, anywhere, can understand. Whoever you are, wherever you are, you only have to know one thing. You can learn anything.
So when you actually this is really great, and it's proven. So I can give you 1,000 articles about every aspect, that everything we have inside us can be developed. So that's good to know. Everything that you have can be developed. Doesn't matter if you're young or old, but you can develop. There are some elements that are, I will talk about that later. But when we look for a coach or a trainer in our club, the first thing we have to find out if he's really believing in his mindset that everything can be developed. Because a coach, a trainer who doesn't believe in this will not be a good fit. So we only look for mindset and characteristics when we recruit our coaches. We don't care what they can do at that moment. We will teach them how to be done. When we talk about talent, it's nice that everybody in our club has the same explanation of talent. Because when we ask this question in the world, everybody's telling a different story. Most of the time they talk, yet it's something to do with tactics, techniques, physics, and mental abilities. Well, let's look into those first two, because tactics is used all the time, but tactics means that I, as a coach, tell you as my players what you have to do. That's tactics. We don't only do that in sport, we do that in our schools as well, we do that in the office all the time. We tell people what to do. Or sometimes in sport, together we make one playing style, one pattern, which we have to do, and then we will be successful. So what about creativity? What about thinking? What about cognition? The word we heard a couple of times. When we look for players, or talent in our belief is, at the beginning he has to understand the game. And understanding the game has something to do with game intelligence. That means that you don't have to know what you have to do, but you have to understand why do you have to do what you have to do. Sometimes in football you go left, sometimes you go right, sometimes you press, sometimes you hold back. Football, together with hockey, is one of the most complicated sports in the world. Every second there are lots of decisions you have to make. We know that it's because we work with our brain partner, Brains First, also here attending. I will talk about that later on. But we understand together that it has something to do with the long-term memory of people. The same with driving a car. You are going to be good in driving a car when you have driven lots of times in the car. Same with football. You will be better in playing football when you play a lot of football. So Messi is not born as a talent. He just had all the time the ball. The ball was his passion, so he footballed a lot of times. And he did so on different circumstances. So he changed all the time. He changed his environment. He played on the grass. He played on the artificial grass. Well, that was not there in Argentina at that time, but he played on the beach. He played on the sand. He played on the concrete. We have a word for that, by the way. We call it straatvoetbal. Street soccer. We don't do that anymore, but that's what is a bad thing. The second thing is making own choices. And there's something else that's really interesting. It's about the cognitive part of the brain, the decision making of the brain. So, for example, I will show you a video. What you will see is that football is not, we all think that football players are stupid people. I can hear you think that, okay, they do stupid things sometimes, as we all do, but actually football players, they have the most phenomenal brain in the world. You don't only see that with football players, you see it with elite level of sport players all the time, but also in air traffic control, for example. You have to have a brain that really is thinking really fast. I will show you a video of how the brain works of football players, so please pay attention.
There's no doubt that Ronaldo's feet are fast and effective, but what part does his mind play in this ability? The eye trackers show intriguing results. On the replay, the little red dot shows exactly what Ronaldo's looking at.
You'd expect a lot of players to be focused on the ball the whole time. With Ronaldo, he did look at the ball a fair amount of time, but he was much more looking around, looking at the defender and taking in the information from his body, and also scanning for the spaces beyond the defender.
Andy, on the other hand, can't afford to take his eyes off the ball because he doesn't have quite the same ability to predict where the ball is going.
To actually see what's going on, we need to slow it down to 1/3 of actual speed.
Yeah.
That's how fast Cristiano is, so you didn't have much of a chance, I'm afraid.
Thanks.
In 8 seconds, he pulled 13 moves on you. Okay, and we're not just talking kicks of the ball, we're talking step overs, spins. Oh, it was beautiful. So you can see here on the gaze data, you can see he's concentrating on the ball. But what you'll see, and the interesting thing, is when he wants to go past you and looking at how you're moving, he's predicting where you're sort of going to be, he's looking for movement in the hips to sort of plan his next move.
So what he's saying that there's when you're playing football, there's a process in your head going on a very quick speed. Is that when I play, I'm picking on the relevant information and I'm processing it in a speed of 0.2 seconds, and I'm predicting where he's going to be, and then I just, like Maradona's doing the same. He's looking at a player that is supposed to step on that side, and I make the decision in 0.2 seconds to go the other way around. And the ability to react is much slower, so I will always pass my player like he's not there. So we know that intelligence, the game intelligence is important, but the cognitive ability is more important, maybe. But that's not the point I want to make. For us, just to have it's only the beginning that I'm talking, but for us, it's only the way to achieve this, because we will be champion, we will be the cup winners, and we will be one of the top 25 clubs in Europe in 2025. And that's all we understand that we have to focus on a particular type of talent in order to do so. Because if we buy the talents that other clubs do, we will have the less money, so we will always be a step behind. But what really is important is this, because this is the Dutch squad of under 17 in 2013-2014. You may recognize 2 players. One from PSV, Steven Bergwijn, and one from the number 6 is the guy from Ajax, Donny van de Beek. The rest doesn't play football on the highest level anymore. So at that time, they were the best talents, and now they don't play anymore. You don't know, maybe no one, but that's a fact. It happens all the time. Because in Holland we are champion, but we are champion in selecting the wrong people. So we always give the chances to people who look like the best, but are not the best in the future. So we are champions in selecting the wrong talents. Because in that age group, those players that you see on the top were people who could play for the under-17s also. They play in our first team now. The second one on the right, well, together this is maybe 50 million euros worth of money. They were completely ignored in 2013. They were playing on the highest level, but nobody picked them as the right talents. Because there was something wrong with them. Because what we do is we tend to look for current performance, but we always forget to look of potential for the future. So how do you do that? When you look in talent, I said everything can be developed. Everything can be developed. But the real question is it going to be enough? Because we cannot pick a guy from the street and put him in our academy, which is one of the best in the world, and we cannot expect them to be the next Messi. It has something to do with genetics. And we found out that there are 3 little parts of children that has something to do with genetics. The first one is speed, for example. So speed has something to do with the fast twitch percentage in your muscles, the muscle fibers. Is it white or is it red? Red has lots of blood, blood has lots of oxygen, oxygen makes you last long. So marathon runners have red muscle fibers. Sprinters, and we want footballers to be quick, they have white muscles in them. The second is the cognitive part of the brain. There's something you are basically born with. We can develop it, but the ability to pick on information is something you are born with on an early age. So that's why we use our partner Brain First, which I said they are here. It's interesting to see, but we came up with a tool to understand, to look for we call it the building blocks of potential, to look, do you have the ability to process the information quick? And the third one is grit. We call it passion. Grit is the American word for it. Are you motivated enough? Do you want it really bad, so you will do everything for it? But also you can develop that a bit, but we have that from our father and mother as well. But there's only one mistake we make when we look for players, is that biological age is not really fair. Because here, well, lots of women grow when they are 12 years old. They have their peak when they are 13 and they end when they are 14 years old. That is the growth peak of everybody. Guys, we are late in everything, so we are also late in growing. We are starting to grow when we are 13, our peak is when we are 14, and when we are 15, it's done. But this is just biological age we're talking about. Because as you see, the biological age isn't happening at the same time all the time. So the guy on the left is even younger, based on calendar age, but he looks like a big player. He's developed. The guy on the right, which is the oldest, is actually the youngest if you look at biological age. So when when we are going to scout for or recruit talent, and we look who's the best, we will all say that the guy on the left is going to be the best, because he's physically strong, and when those people play together, the strongest one survives. They buy 10 good talents, they let them play, do nothing, and the best against the best, and the strongest will come up. It's like when you have 10 eggs and you throw them against a wall, one of those will not break, and that's what we call the strongest egg. That's good, but we cannot do that because we don't have that money. It costs us 50 million euros to look 10 of those talents. We have to make one right decision. So biological age is important. And that is because normally, as I said, people grow when they are 14, they have their growth spurt. But this guy is earlier. He is 2 years early mature. So we call them early maturers. And this guy is late when he matures, so we call it a late maturer. Late maturers, so people who are not good on an early age, have 2 advantages. One of them, they are forced to adapt. Like Wesley Sneijder, we are in Utrecht, so Wesley Sneijder, when he was 13, he was this big. And he had to play against really big opponents. So he thought, hey, let's not make a physical duel, let's choose position carefully. And that's why he created his creativity, because he was forced to think differently. And that's what's happening all the time. When you are good on an early age, you don't create necessity to think differently. So the ability to adapt, which is basically the number 1 characteristic where you have to look for when you look for potential talent, that's very interesting. A second one, 5 minutes? Yeah, 5 minutes.
5.
Or are you hungry? I am, but 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
What also is very interesting is the sensitive periods. So please understand, the sensitive periods of children, some of you have children, is happening when he's a boy who's 8 years old, calendar age, until he starts growing, which is biological 13 years old. So we have a talent in our club. He started to grow when he's 11 years old. So that has a time period of 3 years sensitive period. A player who we call a natural born technical player, he was 15 years old when his body started to grow. That is 7 years of sensitive period. And in this period, the best cognitive, technical, and physical, the coordination of people is developed. So 3 years or 7 years, that's a huge difference. So Messi or Kelvin Stengs, they are not born with the ability to play very good. They just spend a lot of time in a long, sensitive period. So, I will show you what we do. What we do is we don't scout only at matches, so to see who's good, who will win, who is the best, who will win every duel. No, we're trying to look differently at player development. So for example, when I talked about, this is the history of the football players they made, so I want to understand where were you during your sensitive period? What is the time you already spent? Because maybe you are not playing good at this moment, but if you haven't played a big time, we can see, okay, so there's a lot of potential. So two guys the same quality, and one is trained very good and very long time by professional trainers, and one doesn't have any experience at all, I would pick him because there's more potential. But we always pick the other one. The same with, we do personality backgrounds, not to think we take you, because every personality can be a successful football player if you have passion. But we look, how can we use you the best? What are your qualities of adding into a winning team? Some are leaders, some are doers, some are creative. So that's what we do. We use action typing, we use team rules of Belbin, etc. But what's really important here is that we measure the physical ability of players and compare them on the same biological age. So we can compare Jermaine Lens, Adam Maher, Ron Vlaar, when they were 13 years old biological-wise, and we can compare them with a player who's now biological 13. If you use the calendar age, it looks like he's good, but maybe compared to the other ones, he's slower. So we can measure everything, but just measure the good things. And then there's the cognitive score. We do together with Brain First. We call it the Neurolympics. So people, our children, potential children, the children we have, we do it even with our employers to measure not the intelligence as is the IQ, but more as the way of processing information. Doesn't matter if you're a cook or a trainer or a player. Everybody has to have a certain kind of processing. So we measure these areas, and we know, for example, this player, he has an average brain. So he maybe looks like he's very technical good, but for us, that gives us the information, he can play the highest level of Holland, but we compare it with the Champions League level, he has to think of different solutions to do that. And I have two more examples. So this is a player, for example. He has a very good brain, but on the right side you will see Overzicht. That's not developed very good, so together we discussed about it with Brain First, and we came up that this player will not be great when we use him in the center of the game. So we put him to the sidelines. So we found out that he's going to be better in a particular spot in the field. And the same with this player. This is really nice. This is one of the best players we have. He has two little problems. So, but this is really Champions League level. This player is phenomenal. Only his ability to cope with impulses is very low, and his ability to filter what is good and what is important, what is not important, is also very low. So that means that when some player walks behind them, he's tended to think, oh, I have to do something with it. So basically we find out that he will make decisions based on his intuition, and sometimes will be good and sometimes will be difficult. Monir El Hamdoui has the same, I think. So very intuitive players. Doesn't really matter, but this player, actually this profile is from a guy that is not one of the best. He's 2 years behind in his development. Still, we choose him every match for the under 16 because we know he will be one of the greatest when he's going to be old. To wrap it up, I will show you. So how does the brain games work? And I don't have much time, so I would say just to look in the stand they have here. But it's just a computer game. 4 different computer games, and we found out together with lots of universities that if you do it like this, so it doesn't look like football, but it doesn't handle like football, then there's a positive relationship in your brain. So the brain, the parts that you use on the field are the same as you use in solving these games. And they do it all the time in our club, so we have a really nice insight of their ability. So, there's always a take-home message, because you're doing the same as I am, you're recruiting talents, but don't make the mistake that to look for people that are good today, because we tend to look at experience, we tend to look at education, but that doesn't mean shit. It's not the key factors in predicting who's going to be great, really great in the future. That's not only in sports, that's also in business in general. As we did with our coaches, we do it all the time. So please think, is he a real talent or does he only look like a real talent? So if you have any questions, I'm here during my lunch. I take 5 minutes to eat and then I'm all yours. Thank you for your attention and I wish you all a good day. Thank you very much.